James Potter. The Shadow of the Stone. Written by James Pullen. Chapter 1. A Whispering Unease. The triumph of the Wand of Legend still resonated through Eldoria, a lingering echo of power and purpose. James, now a recognized wielder of ancient magic, felt the arcane scepter hum with a familiar, comforting warmth against his hand. Yet, beneath the surface of Eldoria's restored tranquility, a subtle unease began to stir. It wasn't a sudden, cataclysmic threat like the ancient guardian, but a creeping chill, a whisper on the wind that hinted at something new, something insidious. The days following his integration with the wand's power were a blur of training and introspection. Professor Elowin, always perceptive, pushed him further, refining his control, teaching him to channel the raw energy that now flowed through him. Lily, ever the sharpest mind among them, devoured ancient texts, searching for any anomalies that might explain the subtle shifts in Eldoria's magical currents. Caliban, with his quiet strength, meticulously maintained their gear, his eyes always scanning the horizon. Sir Duke, surprisingly focused, helped James with dueling practice, his boisterous energy now directed with precision. Astra, as always, was his anchor, her calm presence a balm to the burgeoning anxieties that threatened to cloud his newfound clarity. One evening, as the twin moons of Eldoria cast long, silver shadows across the Eldergrove courtyard, James felt a strange tremor beneath his feet. It wasn't an earthquake, but something far more subtle, a faint thrumming that seemed to vibrate through the very ley lines of the land. He looked to the other students, but they seemed oblivious, lost in their studies or evening strolls. It was only a fleeting sensation, but it sent a shiver down his spine. The victory over the ancient guardian had closed a chapter, yes, but it felt more and more like a mere preface to a much larger, darker tale. Chapter 2. The Sunken Obelisk. The subtle tremors continued, growing incrementally stronger each day, culminating in a series of strange occurrences across Eldoria. Ancient stones in forgotten ruins began to glow with a faint, sickly green light. Animals usually timid approached the Eldergrove with an unnatural boldness, their eyes glazed over. Whispers spread among the villagers of unsettling dreams, of shadowy figures moving just beyond the edge of sight. James, driven by an instinct he couldn't ignore, consulted with Professor Elowin. She, too, had felt the shift. The ley lines are agitated, she explained, tracing complex patterns on a dusty map. Something is drawing on Eldoria's inherent magic, something powerful enough to destabilize its very foundations. Her finger landed on a remote, unmapped region known only as the Sunken Marshes. Legends speak of a forgotten city here, swallowed by the bog eons ago. And within it, an obelisk said to be a focal point of ancient power. A focal point? James asked, the arcane scepter thrumming in response to the mention of power. A beacon, Elowin confirmed, but also a potential amplifier. If whatever is causing these disturbances is trying to harness that power. She left the unspoken warning hanging in the air. That afternoon, James gathered his friends. Lily, Sir Duke, Astra, and Caliban listened intently as he explained Professor Elowin's suspicions. We need to investigate the Sunken Marshes, James stated, his voice firm. Find this obelisk, and understand what's happening. Their journey to the Sunken Marshes was arduous. The air grew heavy with a cloying mist, and the ground underfoot became treacherous, sinking into murky pools. Twisted, skeletal trees reached like gnarled fingers from the depths, and the silence was broken only by the croaking of unseen creatures and the unsettling gurgle of the bog. As they ventured deeper, a faint, emerald glow began to pierce the gloom, leading them towards the heart of the marshes. It was a faint, sickly light, different from the pure radiance of the arcane scepter. Finally, through the swirling fog, a dark, jagged silhouette emerged. It was an obelisk, but unlike any they had ever seen. Its ancient stone was encrusted with a foul, glowing moss, and strange, unsettling symbols pulsed with the same green light they had seen in the ruins. It was partially submerged in the bog, leaning at a perilous angle, but even in its decay, its immense power was undeniable. This was no relic of benevolent magic, it felt corrupted, malevolent. The tremors James had felt back at Eldergrove were significantly stronger here, vibrating through his very bones. Whatever was happening, it was centered on this place, and the sunken obelisk was at its dark heart. Chapter 3. The Mire Witch's Lair. As James and his companions approached the sunken obelisk, the air grew thick with a putrid scent, a mix of stagnant water and decay. The glowing moss on the obelisk pulsed with an unsettling rhythm, and a low, guttural chanting seemed to emanate from its depths. Suddenly, a skeletal hand, caked with mud and ancient grime, shot out from the bog, grabbing at Caliban's ankle. He reacted instantly, a sharp blast of wind magic dislodging the creature. More hands followed, clawing their way from the murky water, revealing grotesque figures of animated bog dwellers, their eyes glowing with the same eerie green as the obelisk. Ambush! Serduk roared, conjuring a fiery shield. Lily unleashed a flurry of stinging nettle charms, while Astra created a shimmering protective barrier. James, raising the arcane scepter, felt its pure light push back against the oppressive darkness. The bog dwellers were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. From the shadows of a gnarled cypress tree, a cackling laugh echoed, a sound that sent shivers down their spines. A figure emerged, tall and gaunt, draped in robes woven from moss and murky water. Her skin was a sickly green, her eyes glowed with malevolent power, and in her gnarled hand, she wielded a staff topped with a grotesque, glowing skull. This was no ordinary witch, this was a mire witch, a creature of ancient bog magic, long thought to be mere folklore. Fools! Her voice rasped, like stones grinding together. You trespass on my domain. The power of the Shadow Stone is mine to command. The mire witch unleashed a torrent of dark magic, tendrils of black energy lashing out at them. James countered with a powerful surge from the arcane scepter, its light momentarily pushing back the darkness. He realized then that the sunken obelisk wasn't merely a focal point, it was likely connected to this Shadow Stone she spoke of, a relic of immense, dark power that she was attempting to harness. The Shadow Stone, Lily gasped, dodging a volley of poisonous spores. That's why the ley lines are unstable. She's drawing from it. The battle intensified. Serduk and Caliban fought back the bog dwellers while Lily and Astra focused on diverting the mire witch's attacks. James, concentrating his will, felt the arcane scepter hum with renewed vigor. He knew they couldn't defeat her with brute force alone, they needed to disrupt her connection to the obelisk, to the Shadow Stone. He charged forward, the light of the scepter illuminating his path, intent on reaching the heart of the corruption before Eldoria itself was swallowed by the encroaching darkness. Chapter 4. The Heart of the Corruption. James pressed forward, the arcane scepter a beacon against the mire witch's onslaught. Her dark magic swirled around him, attempting to ensnare and corrupt, but the scepter's pure energy held it at bay. He could feel the proximity of the sunken obelisk, the source of the mire witch's amplified power, vibrating with a malevolent hum. You cannot stop me, boy! The mire witch shrieked, her voice echoing through the swamp. The Shadow Stone's power flows through me. Eldoria will kneel. Just as James was about to unleash a concentrated blast of scepter energy, a new element emerged from the murky depths. Giant, grotesque trolls, their skin like hardened mud and their eyes glowing with the same sickly green as the obelisk, lumbered out of the water. They were massive, powerful, and seemingly impervious to their direct magical attacks. Their sheer size and brutal force began to overwhelm Caliban and Serduk, forcing them to retreat. More of her minions, Astra yelled, her protective barrier straining under the trolls' relentless blows. Lily, her face grim, pointed towards the base of the sunken obelisk. Look, the chanting, it's strongest there, and that glowing moss, it's growing from a fissure. James followed her gaze. Indeed, at the base of the ancient structure, a gaping fissure bled the emerald light, and the moss seemed to pulse from within it. This was it, the direct connection to the Shadow Stone. The mire witch was drawing its power not just from the obelisk, but through a direct conduit. He knew what he had to do. With a shout, he concentrated the arcane scepter's energy, not as an attack, but as a disruptive force. He aimed for the fissure, intending to sever the mire witch's direct connection to the Shadow Stone. He poured all his will, all his understanding of the Wand of Legends, into the scepter. A blinding white light erupted from its tip, a pure, concentrated beam that sliced through the oppressive darkness and struck the glowing fissure at the base of the obelisk. The effect was instantaneous and violent. The ground shook, not with subtle tremors, but with a convulsive shudder. The sickly green light from the obelisk flickered wildly, then dimmed. The Mire Witch let out a piercing shriek, her form momentarily wavering as if struck by an invisible force. The trolls, no longer infused with the same dark energy, stumbled, their glowing eyes dimming to a dull, confused flicker. James felt a surge of exhaustion, but also a profound sense of having struck at the heart of the corruption. The Mire Witch's power was weakened, but not broken. The battle, he knew, was far from over, but he had opened a window, a chance to truly defeat her. Chapter 5. The Shadow Stone Revealed. The blinding light from the arcane scepter dissipated, leaving behind a profound silence, broken only by the sloshing of the murky water. The Mire Witch, weakened but still defiant, glared at James, her eyes burning with fury. The trolls, no longer animated by the Shadow Stone's full power, stood sluggishly, their movements uncoordinated. "You meddling brats," the Mire Witch hissed, her voice now hoarse. "You have merely delayed the inevitable. The Shadow Stone cannot be denied." With a renewed surge of determination, James looked at the now flickering fissure at the base of the sunken obelisk. The disruption had revealed something within. He could dimly perceive a dark, pulsating mass, radiating a cold, oppressive aura. This was it, the Shadow Stone, the malevolent relic that had been corrupting Eldoria's ley lines. "Lily, Astra, try to contain the witch," James commanded. "Sir Duke, Caliban, keep those trolls off us. I'm going for the stone." His friends, understanding the urgency, moved swiftly. Lily wove a complex binding spell, attempting to restrict the Mire Witch's movements, while Astra created a series of distracting illusions. Sir Duke and Caliban, with renewed vigor, focused on incapacitating the dazed trolls, knocking them into the bog. James, holding the arcane scepter aloft, pushed through the remaining bog dwellers, their weakened forms easily dispatched by the scepter's light. He reached the fissure, its edges now crackling with a faint, corrupted energy. He peered inside. The Shadow Stone was larger than he'd anticipated, a jagged, obsidian shard, pulsing with an inner darkness that seemed to absorb all light around it. It was ancient, clearly not of Eldorian origin, and its malevolence was almost palpable. As he reached for it, the Mire Witch, despite Lily's efforts, broke free, a guttural roar escaping her lips. "No, you will not touch it. It is mine." She lunged, a desperate, final surge of dark magic aimed directly at James. But Astra, seeing the danger, threw herself forward, creating a powerful shield that absorbed the brunt of the attack, though the effort sent her reeling back. Sir Duke and Caliban finally managed to subdue the last of the trolls, and turned their attention to the witch, joining Lily in a concerted effort to bind her. With his path momentarily clear, James reached out and, with the arcane scepter in hand, touched the Shadow Stone. A searing cold shot through him, threatening to consume him in its icy grip. He gritted his teeth, channeling the pure, radiant energy of the arcane scepter and the wand of legends directly into the corrupted artifact. There was a terrible screech, a sound of agony and defiance, as the pure light of the scepter met the ancient darkness of the stone. The obelisk groaned, and fissures spread across its surface. The swamp itself seemed to writhe in protest. This was not a simple removal. It was a magical confrontation, a clash of ancient powers, and James was at its epicenter, determined to cleanse Eldoria of its malignant influence. Chapter 6. The Cleansing and the Price. The clash between the arcane scepter's radiant energy and the Shadow Stone's oppressive darkness was cataclysmic. A blinding flash erupted from the fissure, forcing Lily, Sir Duke, Astra, and Caliban to shield their eyes. The air crackled with raw magic, and the very ground beneath them shuddered violently. James felt as if he were being torn in two, the freezing malevolence of the Shadow Stone battling against the burning purity of the wand of legends within him. He pushed, pouring every ounce of his will, every memory of Eldoria's beauty, every friendship, into the scepter. The Shadow Stone pulsed erratically, its dark heart struggling against the relentless light. The Mire Witch, caught in the throes of the stone's weakening, shrieked, her form flickering, her power rapidly draining. The remaining trolls dissolved into puddles of murky water. With a final, explosive surge, the Shadow Stone let out a sound like a dying beast, and then, with a deafening crack, it shattered. Fragments of obsidian flew outward, instantly dissolving into wisps of harmless shadow as they hit the air. The sunken obelisk, no longer supported by the stone's dark magic, groaned and slowly, majestically, began to crumble, sinking further into the bog. The oppressive gloom lifted, the putrid scent of decay dissipated, replaced by the fresh, clean smell of damp earth and verdant life. The sickly green glow that had afflicted the marshes vanished, and the air felt lighter, purer. James stumbled back from the crumbling obelisk, the arcane scepter still glowing faintly in his hand, but now radiating a soothing, gentle warmth. He was utterly exhausted, trembling from the sheer expenditure of magical energy. The mire witch, now reduced to a frail, withered hag, lay on the muddy ground, stripped of her power, her eyes dull and lifeless. "James!" Lily cried, rushing to his side, followed by Astra, Sir Duke, and Caliban. "Are you all right?" Astra asked, her voice laced with concern. He nodded, a weak smile touching his lips. "Exhausted. But, it's done. The Shadow Stone is gone." Professor Elowin arrived shortly after, her face etched with a mix of relief and awe. She surveyed the scene, then turned her gaze to James, her eyes filled with pride. "You have truly become the guardian of Eldoria, James. You have not only wielded the Wand of Legends, but you have cleansed a deep corruption." As they made their slow, weary way back to Eldergrove, the path that had been fraught with danger now felt strangely serene. The marshes, no longer corrupted, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. James looked back at the now submerged ruins of the obelisk. The victory had come at a cost. The immense effort had drained him deeply, and he knew it would take time to recover fully. But the sense of peace that settled over Eldoria was worth every ounce of effort. The land was healed, the ancient evil banished. Their adventure had ended not with a grand confrontation, but with a quiet, profound cleansing. The legend of James Potter, the wielder of the Wand of Legends, was now irrevocably intertwined with the very essence of Eldoria, a testament to courage, friendship, and the enduring power of light against shadow. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. The journey back to Eldergrove was a somber one. The group moved slowly, each lost in their own thoughts, the weight of their victory heavy on their shoulders. James, despite the exhaustion that gripped him, couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. The Shadow Stone was gone, and with it, the malevolent influence that had been threatening Eldoria. As they approached the familiar walls of Eldergrove, Professor Elowin turned to James, her expression a mix of pride and concern. "You have done something extraordinary, James. But remember, the path of a guardian is never easy. There will be more challenges ahead." James nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "I know, Professor. But I'm ready. I have my friends, and I have the Wand of Legends. Together, we can face whatever comes next." The group was greeted by a flurry of activity as they entered the courtyard. Students and staff alike had been aware of the strange occurrences and were eager to hear news of their adventure. Professor Elowin quickly dispersed the crowd, ushering James and his friends to the infirmary for rest and recuperation. In the days that followed, James found himself reflecting on the events in the sunken marshes. The battle with the Mire Witch and the destruction of the Shadow Stone had been a pivotal moment, but he couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. The land of Eldoria was vast, and there were undoubtedly more secrets and dangers lurking in its depths. Chapter 8. The Prophecy Unveiled. As James recovered, he spent countless hours in the library, poring over ancient texts and scrolls, seeking any mention of the Shadow Stone or the sunken obelisk. His dedication paid off when he stumbled upon a dusty, forgotten tome that spoke of a prophecy long thought to be mere legend. The prophecy spoke of a time when the balance of Eldoria would be threatened by a dark force, a shadow that would seek to corrupt the very essence of the land. It foretold of a chosen one, a wielder of ancient magic, who would rise to challenge this darkness and restore harmony. The prophecy was vague, but James couldn't help but feel a sense of destiny weighing on his shoulders. He shared his discovery with his friends, and together, they delved deeper into the meaning of the prophecy. Lily, ever the scholar, spent hours cross-referencing texts, searching for any clues that might shed light on their next steps. Caliban, with his keen eye for detail, studied maps and charts, trying to pinpoint any other locations that might hold significance. Sir Duke, ever the optimist, tried to lift their spirits with tales of their past adventures and the friendships they had forged. Astra, as always, provided a calming presence, her unwavering support a beacon of strength for the group. As they worked, James couldn't shake the feeling that their next challenge was just around the corner. The prophecy spoke of trials and tribulations, of sacrifices that would need to be made. He steeled himself, knowing that whatever lay ahead, he would face it with courage and determination, supported by the unbreakable bond of friendship that held their group together. Chapter 9. The Gathering Storm. Days turned into weeks, and the sense of unease that had lingered after their victory over the Shadow Stone began to intensify. Whispers of strange occurrences echoed through Eldoria, tales of shadows moving in the corners of vision, of whispers carried on the wind that spoke of impending doom. James and his friends knew that their respite was coming to an end, and a new challenge was on the horizon. Professor Elowen, ever vigilant, called for a meeting with James and his companions. Her expression was grave as she spread out a map of Eldoria on the table, pointing to a remote, mountainous region known as the Whispering Peaks. Reports have been coming in from the villagers there. They speak of a dark presence, something that moves in the night, leaving only fear and despair in its wake. James leaned in, studying the map. The Whispering Peaks were a treacherous range, known for their harsh climate and the eerie howling winds that gave them their name. "What do you think it is, Professor?" he asked, his voice steady despite the chill that ran down his spine. Elowen shook her head. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's powerful. And it's growing stronger. We need to investigate, and quickly. If this darkness is allowed to fester, it could consume all of Eldoria." The group exchanged determined looks, knowing that their next adventure was about to begin. They gathered their gear, preparing for the arduous journey ahead. As they set out, the weight of their mission settled on their shoulders, but they were ready. Together, they would face whatever awaited them in the Whispering Peaks, driven by the knowledge that the fate of Eldoria rested in their hands. Chapter 10. The Final Stand. The journey to the Whispering Peaks was fraught with danger. The mountains were unforgiving, the paths treacherous, and the howling winds seemed to carry the whispers of ancient horrors. As they climbed higher, the air grew thin and cold, and the shadows seemed to lengthen, as if reaching out to ensnare them. Finally, they reached the heart of the range, a desolate plateau bathed in an eerie, sickly light. At its center stood a towering monolith, its surface carved with the same unsettling symbols they had seen on the sunken obelisk. The air crackled with dark energy, and a sense of dread hung heavy over the land. From the shadows of the monolith, a figure emerged, tall and gaunt, draped in robes that seemed to absorb the very light around it. Its eyes burned with a malevolent intelligence, and in its hand, it wielded a staff that pulsed with a sickly green light. The Mire Witch, thought to be vanquished, stood before them once more, her power amplified by the darkness of the Whispering Peaks. "Fools," she rasped, her voice like the grinding of stones. "You have come to your end. The power of the Shadow Stone flows through me, and with it, I shall claim Eldoria as my own." James stepped forward, the arcane scepter glowing brightly in his hand. "Not while we draw breath," he declared, his voice steady and sure. "Eldoria will not fall to your darkness." The battle that ensued was fierce and unforgiving. The Mire Witch unleashed a torrent of dark magic, tendrils of shadow lashing out at them with relentless fury. James and his friends fought back with all their might, their spells and strategies honed by the trials they had faced. The monolith seemed to resonate with the witch's power, amplifying her attacks and threatening to overwhelm them. But James would not be defeated. With a final, desperate surge of will, he poured every ounce of his strength into the arcane scepter, channeling the pure, radiant energy of the Wand of Legends. A blinding light erupted from the scepter, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. The Mire Witch screamed, her form wavering as the light tore through her, severing her connection to the Shadow Stone once and for all. As the light faded, the witch crumbled to dust, her power dispersed, her threat vanquished. The monolith, no longer supported by her dark magic, began to crumble, sinking into the earth as if the very land rejected its presence. The shadows retreated, and the whispers on the wind faded, replaced by a profound sense of peace and tranquility. James and his friends stood amidst the ruins, their breaths coming in ragged gasps, their bodies aching from the exertion. But they had prevailed. Eldoria was safe, the darkness banished, and their legend etched forever in the annals of time. As they made their way back to Eldergrove, the sun setting over the Whispering Peaks, James knew that their journey was far from over. But for now, they could rest, secure in the knowledge that they had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. Together, they would continue to guard Eldoria, their bond unbreakable, their spirit unyielding, ready to face whatever challenges the future might hold.